Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at Tenko Seraph Haven. This deck seems to be doing exceptionally well post nerf, and that's why we're covering it. So of course generic Seraph decks don't tend to do quite as well, as they are lacking a decent kind of win con, but I have found that the Tenko Shrine in particular is doing an amazing job at substituting in that second win con and really letting you control the game right up. Definitely would label this as a control deck as it stands. And of course Godsworn blocks out nearly every big hitter your opponent could possibly have, ranging from Portal, Rune, Dragon, anything with huge attack followers or huge attack effects that really just get completely shut down by that turn 7 Godsworn. So definitely a card I love using. Everything else, of course, then just supports this archetype, ranging from healing to killing. That's basically all this deck does, and getting in that little bit of damage with things like Tenko, or just completely closing the game with Seraph, and using a combination of Omen of Repose and Hollow Dogmas to proc your Seraph a little earlier. Definitely a deck I enjoy. I've had a lot of success, and I can't really say too many things bad about this deck. It does get killed off, of course, by really heavy aggro decks, so Sword can become a problem, but I've found that it's usually a pretty even matchup, especially against mid-sword in particular. It's aggro sword that I'd watch out for. Everything else I've found I have either a positive or 50-50 matchup with, at least as far as testing this goes for now. Of course, it is only day 2, so I expect there to be some more meta shifts. Forest, pretty easy matchup overall. You can pretty much just lock down and knock your opponent out as you go. Of course, a little bit of chip damage can be a little bit of a problem from Forest, as they will tend to get a cumulative amount of damage over time, and that can really wreck your plans, as Godsworn won't block out those little bits of damage, so a little bit disappointed there, but for the most part you can negate that with healing, which is usually fine. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So, kicking us off, we're going up against Haven, so a semi-mirror match, I would say, probably closer to an exact mirror match. Haven decks tend to vary slightly from 1 or 2 card choices, so it's never an exact mirror match, but the archetype is usually going to be very, very similar in rotation especially. We're going to probably see a lot of Seraph kind of decks pop up, and they're usually going to be very similar matchups. So going first, definitely a huge advantage in the mirror, as you are going to be able to get your Seraph down first, which is usually the important part of this match. Of course, it's also possible they are going for a straight up Amulet Haven deck, which also wouldn't surprise me. In that case, it would be one of the few archetypes that are actually different, even though they do run a similar top end. So we got a pretty nice curve out there, basically just filling our board with amulets, setting ourselves up. Our opponent really is giving us plenty of time to do so as well, so we're not really in any trouble at this point in the match. And I did debate a little bit on going with the two 2-drops that we had instead of the globe here, but I felt like going for the healing and globe, considering Tenko is our next play, was a really good setup. Because at this stage, all we really need to do is get to 7, set up our 7-drop, and then just kind of win from there. The only real counter to most of these decks are going to be destroying Tenko Shrine in some way, shape, or form, but I mean, that costs a reasonable amount for our opponents, and really isn't going to be a huge problem for us, as you'll usually want 1 or 2 on board, so honestly, it's just not a big problem when you've got the alt win con Seraph, and you can't usually focus on 6 amulets too easily. Your opponent to clear all 6 amulets pretty much deserves to win at that point. This deck also has a decent draw engine in it. There's a fair few draw cards. It's always a nice thing to take advantage of. Now, opponent's kind of just digging for what they can use. Omen of Repose is no surprise. I would expect an evolve out of that. Because with an evolve, it will easily survive one of these 6/6s and then be able to pretty easily just tank another amount of damage. Probably just the Tenko, honestly, because we don't want to risk ramming our 6/6 into this. There's our Godsworn Wall protecting us as usual. And using the last Evo point to get 8/8 damage is pretty reasonable in this situation. We want to get them down as low as we can to just take advantage of this Tenko, as we haven't drawn into our Seraph. So at this point we're just kind of buying time, and our opponent, obviously realizing they can't beat both these out, concedes the game and gives us the victory. And the next game out of our 2 or 3 games, I haven't really decided how many we're going to cover for this video, is Rune. Rune is a very positive matchup for this deck, as blocking out Giant Chimera is extremely easy, dropping out and Sorcery, again, extremely easy. So they're the kind of two big hitting Rune decks at the moment. There's a few smaller ones like mid-range and things like that, but I've honestly found that they tend to lack when it comes to killing an opponent off, so usually you can block them out quite easily as well. So this is Mysteria. It's pretty obvious once you see a Mysteria card like that one come down. I go for the Blacken just so we don't have to deal with that early Mysteria card, and I didn't really want to have to do anything else. Plus I didn't really have any other 2-drop play, and playing nothing just feels so bad in this deck. So we go for the healing because, again, not many other decent options to play out here. But we're going to at least have the chance to start pumping some cards to the board. So going with our draw card first and then going for our Unicorn Knight is going to be fairly decent for the board. Being able to use the Evo, clear this out, not really a problem. Heal up again to 19. As long as we can keep our health at a reasonable level this match, we should be fine. And for our course, our opponent's going for more Mysteria cards. No surprise there. Ideally we'd want a Tenko here, but I don't think we're going to get that unfortunately, so we'll go for the Globe early, and then just Unicorn Spear this away. Keeping our opponent's board clear and our health up, two most important things in this matchup. Looks like we're going to get a free turn to drop Gem Princess, and we actually have Glorious Seraph in our hand now, so all we have to do is get to turn 8. Play that down, hope that it doesn't get simply removed by a transform or something, as that is an absolute bane of Seraph of course, so Fall from Grace can be absolutely crippling against this deck, but they only have so many. So being able to counter every single card that we could potentially play is reasonably low. So we get to clear all of this out and get a couple damage to face just by playing Salvation, along with, if we want, the Evo on the 6/6, which will get us a decent amount of damage overall. I also forgot that we don't actually have the Tenko for some reason, so blanking on that, we only get the 8 damage, but 8 is more than enough to really start to close this.
Another of God's trials.
So with a couple of decent draws there, Hollow Dogma and the fact that we got more, Omen of Repose. Omen of Repose is going to do a wonderful job. Of course, it would be nice if our Seraph could get cleared next turn, but I doubt that's going to be it. As then we would be able to proc it nearly for victory at that point. So it's definitely going to be a little trickier. So we don't really have a lot of options, which is a bit disappointing. I wanted a decent way to proc the Seraph, unfortunately we just couldn't really get there. So I do my best to really control the board and keep our health up for now, as I felt like it was going to be the only way to survive this. And they're definitely going to be pushing us close because they've now played quite a few cards. So we really need a decent way to remove this board again. Unfortunately we don't have another beacon in our hand to use. But we have a chance, and I'm willing to bet on that chance, even if it's just a little bit. So I couldn't ask for a much better draw there. That's actually really nice, being able to get our Omen of Repose. So double Omen is definitely going to be good. Of course, it puts us at a little bit of a risk, because they do have the chance to play and Sorcery anyway. But I mean, we are going to pretty much limit it to them having to have at least 14 damage. So this end Sorcery needs to be 14 damage. Unfortunately, it was only 13, so they were one short after my heal, and that did give us the victory. So overall, I found most matches tend to go one of those two ways, where Tenko will either be your bigger player or Seraph will be a bigger player. Of course, if you do get in a much longer game, both of those can combo together really well, especially on curve. If you can curve out pretty decently from your early drops, say even just from 2 drops to 3 to 4, you should be fine. Getting, of course, Omen into Princess is usually good as well. I quite like going turn 4 Omen of Repose and then turn 6 or turn 5 for 6 play points into Princess, as it is a nice little bit of ramp. Overall though, this deck just is doing wonderfully. I, again, can't fault it. definitely recommend it if you've got the cards to do it. Would I recommend you craft up the cards just specifically for this deck? Not at this stage, as we don't know where the meta is going to go in the next few days, and we expect to see some sort of shift, at least as far as decks on the ladder go, so definitely don't invest in this too heavily if you don't already have most of the cards. Godsworn might be a good investment, as I think it's still a pretty decent card as far as turn 7 goes, as nearly everything hits you later. If the mini expansion turns out to have a lot more late game win cons, turn 7 Godsworn is going to be absolutely nuts. So if you did enjoy this video, hit the like button and subscribe. If you want to see more of this deck, definitely hit that like button to encourage me to make more for this deck in particular. Until next time, see ya.